And welcome, Hoosier Nation, to our 38th episode of the Hoosier Sound, where our show has one main goal: to give you our perspective of IU sports from the point of view as a student or young adult. In addition, we will also give our view on hot takes from around the world of sports. We are recording this edition on Wednesday evening, May 30th, where I am your host, Noah Freeman, and I am with my usual co-host, Matthew Lukens.
What's up?
Normally, we will be going live every Tuesday evening at 8:30 p.m., but if you miss us live, you can subscribe to our various networks so you can listen on your own time. Check out our Twitter and Facebook at The Hoosier Sound and subscribe. All of the information is in our website, thehoosiersound.com. We've got a couple announcements before we get into the sports talk. First off, we got approved for TuneIn Radio. So if you use TuneIn or would like to check it out, yada, 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 we've got that link in the description below. Lastly, we need your help, guys. We are looking to update our website, and sadly, that comes at a cost. We are ready to take your experience to the next level, and we really need your help if at all possible. We want to make the website more friendly, add more features, add different plugins so it's a more comfortable place for you to go, easier live stream access, adding the chat into that live stream, and just make it a nicer place. But we have a GoFundMe set up, and all we got to do is raise just $60. It's not a huge thing at all. So if at all possible, even just a $5 donation goes a very, very long way. So thank you guys.
Donation goes a long way too. So
exactly.
Anything.
Yeah. Exactly. But thank you guys so much in advance. The link is in our website or the description below. But all right, Hoosier Nation, it is time for some sports talk. We first would like to apologize for moving our normal live stream / sending out the podcast a day late, but we thought we would take the opportunity to post it right after the Huber's Winery, which is still going on right now, but we've got some speeches and questions and stuff that we're going to talk about from Archie and some of the IU sports program. But we're going to start out first with Hoosiers in the pros. Obviously, first, I'm going to start out by saying we are not going to get to everyone at all. Going to IU, of course, there's a lot of people that are in the pros, which is a great thing, but we're not going to be able to touch on everyone. But I would like to start out with basketball. And this was almost a Hoosier in the pro, but Juwan Morgan last night finally said that he is going to come back to Indiana. So thankfully, he is not going to be a Hoosier in the pro just yet. Next year, in about 365 days, we can say that he is. But touch on it just really real brief before we continue forward.
I was getting little voices in my head that was like, Juwan's good. Maybe somebody's actually telling him he needs to go to the NBA. And then I was like, oh no. Like good for him, but like, oh please no. Like, don't do this on us now. But it ended up working out well. So
it did. And if you didn't know, today was the deadline. So he had to get it in by, I don't remember what specific time, but today. And he announced on Instagram yesterday, late afternoon-ish, that he was going to come back, and it all works out. So thankfully, we don't have one Hoosier in the pro just yet. But let's move on to hopefully someone that will be in the pros. Let's go to Robert Johnson. So we got Rojo. He had a workout with the Milwaukee Bucks. If you follow his Twitter account, he put a little thing there of just him shooting at the Bucks. We'll wait to see. Basically, there's not too much to see with him yet because obviously the draft has yet to happen. Whether he gets drafted or not, we'll get to see if he gets invited to a camp or not after that. But that's kind of where we're kind of in limbo with Robert and all the other seniors. Like we talked with Freddie, that his goal is to still play somewhere else. So we'll have to get more updates on the outgoing seniors. But let's move to James Blackman Jr., who had his first year in the pros. He was obviously an undrafted free agent with the 76ers to start out. He signed with them with training camp, waived with them during the preseason. And then in January, he was traded from the Delaware 87ers, which is the 76ers G League affiliate, to the Wisconsin Herd, which is the Milwaukee Bucks G League affiliate. So that's where he is right now. Next, and before I continue, obviously, we are not going to be able to have every single player on here, but Yeah, we're gonna keep moving forward. So I lost my train of thought. All right. Well, Thomas Bryant. Thomas Bryant drafted last year in the second round. Oh, that was what I was gonna say. Obviously, you know a lot of this stuff, so we're gonna just rehash it. Some things you know, some things you don't know, and just updates. But Thomas Bryant drafted last year in the second round. If you don't remember, it was by the Utah Jazz, but that was when they had like the immediate trade, basically that his rights went to the Lakers. But he was basically drafted by the Lakers from day one. This past year, he played for the Los Angeles Lakers, so the NBA Lakers, for 15 games. He averaged 4.8 minutes per game when he got called up, had about 1.5 points per game, 1.1 rebounds per game. So didn't get to see the court too much, but that's what happened. Most of his stuff was in the South Bay Lakers, so the G League affiliate. He played for 37 games, started 35 of them, so he had a lot. He had 30.7 minutes per game, so he was on the court a very long time every game.
Yeah.
19.7 points per game, 7.4 rebounds per game, 60% field goal percentage, and 67% free throw percentage. So I think those are great stats, at least for a guy like him coming up into the NBA. Those are stats that the G League, that if he keeps progressing, he will be on an NBA team and be on an NBA team consistently.
Yep. He's definitely going to be a bench guy. He's got the personality for it, at least. And he could become the lovable bench guy for the Lakers at the worst, I think. Kind of like Swaggy P and JaVale McGee are the lovable bench guys on the Warriors. He can be that, but like Thomas Bryant on the Lakers someday. I feel like that's stuff, or another NBA team wherever his path takes him.
Yeah, I agree. I think obviously he played in the G League for most of the season, but he's going to find his way onto an NBA team. Definitely a bench guy, but he'll get there eventually. Let's move on to the last of that graduating class. We got OG, who obviously played a lot more than even those two combined in the NBA. He played for 74 games, and he started 62 of them. So right away he started 62 out of 82 games, which is a very high percentage, especially as a freshman. He averaged only about 20 minutes per game, had about 6 points per game. So those stats don't look as good, but the big stat to really show how valuable he was on the floor for the Toronto Raptors was ESPN put out a statistic that 4 out of the 5 highest rookie plus minuses in the last 20 seasons in the NBA, 4 out of the 5 came from this year's class. Obviously, they had 3 other people, and then I don't remember who that other person was. But then OG was 5th on that list with a plus 294 plus minus. So that obviously shows that even though he was only averaging 6 points per game, he wasn't being flashy. He was still getting the job done mostly on the defensive end.
Right. Yeah. OG is mostly a defensive player as it is. I mean, he hits a couple threes here and there, but when you have him on the floor, his main attribute is defense. And in the playoffs, he was doing really well up until he did really well the first series, and then they ran into LeBron James.
But in the first series, he was a lot of the time guarding John Wall.
Yeah, no, they put him on.
He was guarding John Wall as a rookie.
As a rookie, they trusted him to guard the best player on the other team.
And it's not even just the best player on the other team. NBA All-Star, 8th season, so he's already a veteran basically in the season. He has playoff experience, so he's not a rookie. And they guarded him. They trusted OG, this rookie, to guard John Wall for not the whole time, but a good portion of the time.
And then they ran into LeBron James, who's at like the peak of his career right now. I don't think he can play better than what he's playing right now. And obviously it's the Raptors too.
There's some bias coming out of Matt right now because he is a Cavaliers fan. But
yeah, and I'm not a Cavaliers fan. I am a LeBron fan. Let's get that right. Wherever he goes, I'm going to root for the team next year just because I want LeBron to win. Anyways, besides that fact, it's going to be really hard for OG as a rookie to guard the best player to play in the last 20 years. So, like rookie Kawhi Leonard had a hard time guarding LeBron when he played for the Spurs. So and now Kawhi is regarded as one of the best people at guarding LeBron James. So it's going to take time. OG's going to develop, but he's going to be a very good NBA starter. And I think the future looks great for this class of Hoosiers in the pros.
Yeah, I agree. And the key wording that you just said was starter, because I do think he is going to find a starting job somewhere on an NBA team, depending on whatever if the Raptors want to just reboot or keep pounding away with this one roster. That's a story for a different time. But let's keep going on. Before we get to Troy and Yogi, people often sometimes forget about Nick Zysloff, that he actually did find not actually. He did find his way through not necessarily NBA stuff, but he found his way through professional sports. So he was drafted last year. Well, wasn't drafted, but he was with the Pacers for a little while with their G League affiliate, and then after that, he was basically with the Mad Ants for a little bit, and then part of last season. Or this past season, excuse me, he was played for a Lithuanian team, so he's over in Europe. Not starting yet, but he's got a spot in the job. He's got a paycheck, so he's doing okay. Then Troy Williams, he's had an interesting NBA ride so far. We obviously know that he had his start with the Rockets, had his few good games here and there the season prior. This past season, though, he was waived in February by the Rockets, picked up by the Knicks just a little while after for a 10-day contract. Couple weeks after that, so just after his 10-day contract expired or so, he signed a multi-year contract in mid-March with the Knicks. So he was on the Knicks for 17 games before he broke his jaw, and he was out for the rest of the very little remainder of the season. But right now he signed a multi-year deal with the Knicks. During those 17 games, he just started one of them, but he was averaging 17.1 minutes per game. He had a 49% field goal percentage and about 7.5 points per game, which is pretty good when you think about
That's just pretty good for his first full starting season in the NBA. I think. Or was it second?
His second season, yeah.
But even he didn't play that much when he was on the Rockets anyways, so it's really his first full stint, getting some actually serious minutes for the Knicks. And getting 8 points a game, shooting 45%, that's good. That's a good start.
I think the more telling stat is that he did this in late March and early April, which is when the Knicks were obviously not winning any more games. He came into a completely different system. He obviously the Knicks franchise is not the greatest right now, so he's not coming into a great situation yet. He was still making something out of it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was yawning. Yeah, but
the dead air coming from Matt yawning.
No, but definitely improvement. And I like that he got a multi-year contract. A lot like the next guy we're going to talk about did the previous.
Exactly, Yogi Ferrell. He did play all 82 games this season. He didn't start all of them. He only started 21, but he did play all 82 games this season. And like the last player we're going to talk about, still coming off the bench for most of it, he averaged 27.8 minutes per game. So he was still playing a little over half the game. Those are exactly. Yeah. It's more than starting minutes for a few players sometimes. So, yeah, averaging almost 28 minutes per game, that's great. He had about 43% field goal percentage, 37% from three, and 80% free throw, which is he's doing pretty well with free throws because you're about 90s. You're about to the top, like the 1% of NBA free throw shooters, basically. And he was averaging 10.2 points per game. I think Yogi being in Dallas, at least for now, is great for him, even with getting guards being drafted after him. But I still think Mark Cuban, all that kind of stuff, I think that's a great situation for him.
Yeah, I agree. Unless they draft another guard, which I don't see them doing that this year. But if on the happen chance they happen to draft one of the top guards this year, then I would want him to get out of Dallas.
I agree.
But Rick Carlisle is a great coach, and they're tanking, but I think Mark Cuban as an owner knows how good of a coach Rick Carlisle is, and Yogi is going to benefit a lot more being coached by Rick Carlisle than he is going to be by almost any other coach in the league. And he fits the system really well. I think Dennis Smith Jr. is their long-time, like, futuristic point guard. Like, he's going to be starting for the future, from now into the future. So I think best case scenario in Dallas, Yogi's looking at coming off as maybe like a second point guard on the floor.
Which a lot of teams don't have. A lot of teams do not have quality backup point guards.
Right, or a quality backup point guard. So that's going to be his role. And I mean, you look what it does for other teams that are in the championship. You look at Cavaliers. You have Jose Calderon, who's a fantastic backup point guard for the Cavs and played some really important minutes in this year's playoffs, especially in the Pacers series. Sorry. And then you look at the Warriors, and the Warriors have Sean Livingston, who's possibly the best backup point guard in the league. So Yogi can make a niche for himself in the league by being a backup point guard, and I can see him doing that. I think he needs to get the 43% field goal percentage. I think that needs to go up at least about 3%, 4%,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
47, 48% from the floor. But, I mean, when you're on a tanking team, you're not going to be taking the best shots in the world. So
yeah, and the Mavericks is a good place to be. That's a good franchise that's not going to be down for long. It's not going to be a franchise that will cross over that the Browns that might never get out of their funk. But the Mavericks, remember, they did they were at the very top of the league and winning a title a few years ago. So they're not going to be down for long.
But I don't want to talk about those finals. Nope.
The next player we're going to talk about, we're not going to talk about for long because we could spend an entire episode on him, is obviously Victor Oladipo. No one didn't hear about what he did basically in the NBA this season. He led the league in steals, first NBA All-Star, NBA All-NBA third team, NBA All-Defensive first team. Just incredible, just listing those stats right away, coming finally being traded to a place that he can shine and getting great stats that he never had before. But lastly, which we were going to have, Matt and I were talking about, and I was like, oh, this would be a great segue into the next topic that we were supposed to talk about with Eric Gordon and the NBA Finals. But obviously the Golden State Warriors were the Golden State Warriors, and Eric Gordon, his 2017-2018 season is over. But I wanted to talk about him in the 2018 playoffs because he obviously played all 17 games for the Rockets, started only 2 of them, but they basically intentionally had him coming off the bench because he was such a huge bench player. We talked about Yogi coming off the bench, but Eric came off the bench and had averaged 32.3 minutes per game as a bench player, which is huge. That is huge. His stats were not the greatest of what he usually likes. Sometimes the Rockets themselves, they kind of just threw up just some pretty bad shots, but he had 38% field goal, 33% from 3, 84% from free throw, which was really good until the very end of the Warriors. Yep, exactly. And then averaged 15.4 points per game this season. But Eric Gordon's been there a while, obviously. That's where he's going to be. That's where he's going to stay. He knows his role there, et cetera, et cetera. All right, we're going to go through the next couple pretty quickly because there's not too much to talk about specifically, because at least with football next, we're going to talk a lot about the incoming Hoosiers and the Bros that just came off of this draft class, which we're obviously in the middle of camps and players trying to make teams and everything. But as of now, we had obviously 2 2018 drafted players that are currently on a 90-man roster. Ian Thomas, tight end with the Panthers, 4th round, the 101st overall pick. Chris Covington, linebacker, the Cowboys, 6th round, 193rd pick. Drafted, usually they're going to make at least the 90-man roster before getting cut down to the 53-man roster in September. We had 4 undrafted free agents that are now currently on the 90-man roster. Simi Cobbs is with the Redskins. Rashard Fant is with the Bears. Robert McCray III is with the Chiefs. And T. Gray Scales is with the Rams. So these guys making that 90-man roster, getting past rookie minicamp, is good for them. They have the summer to try and prove themselves to get onto that 53-man roster. We had, if you remember looking at, there was a lot of statistics about Hoosier football players getting to some team. We talked about that with rookie minicamp. So basically they bring in a lot of players for a weekend rookie minicamp where they try out a lot of these players basically. But these guys did not make a roster even though they were on a rookie minicamp. So Chase Dutra was on the Lions rookie minicamp. Tony Fields was with the Jaguars. Greg Gooch was with the Saints. Greg Gooch, I don't think he's done yet. But Richard Lego, he was with the Chiefs, and then he went to the Colts. But per Twitter, he's actually going to be working next year with the Hoosier Huddle this fall to cover IU football as he continues to try and find a way into the NFL. And then Griffin Oaks was with the Buccaneers. Any comments on any of those guys, or just pretty cut and try?
On the rookies or on the people that were in the mini camps?
Either, yeah.
I think T. Gray's in a great situation in I almost said St. Louis, Los Angeles with the Rams. I think their linebacking core is in need of a good linebacker. I think I was really upset when he wasn't drafted.
Yeah, as we all were.
Immediately signed right afterwards, which means I think he was on the cusp of being drafted.
I think he was like the first Hoosier, the undrafted Hoosier, to get signed. It was like minutes after the draft officially closed.
No, he was he's probably one of the next picks after Mr. Irrelevant. Like he was one of the next guys up, and then Simi Cobbs, I was really upset he didn't get drafted either, but he's also in a great situation with the Redskins.
That's a story in itself, because Simi Cobbs, just because he basically did not have a good combine, and teams went from having him in the 3rd round to not being drafted, and obviously all Hoosier fans are upset, and he'll just prove everyone wrong. But continue.
Yeah, exactly. And he's on a Redskins team that's rebuilding right now anyways, because they lost their quarterback. So
they need receiver depth anyway. They've never had. Yeah,
definitely. So
yeah, exactly.
I mean, what else can I say about Covington's going to get playing time most likely, and then I'm blanking on who else got drafted.
You got Fant, undrafted free agent. McCray, undrafted. Ian Thomas.
Ian Thomas is going to be a starting tight end in this league. And he's going to be really, really, really good someday.
Which he's in the perfect spot because he gets to learn from Greg Olsen, one of the best tight ends in the league.
And he gets Cam Newton throwing to him, so he can count his blessings every day that he actually has a decent quarterback.
Yep, he's got a decent quarterback. He's got a veteran, seasoned tight end that's one of the best in the league, who they're basically seeing him, from all accounts, at least their plan, it looks like as of now, is for him to be the replacement of Greg Oden. Yeah. But let's move on to Greg Oden. Wow. Greg Olsen. All right. Just flying through the next couple of things. Baseball, we could talk about that a lot, and that obviously changes a lot. But as of now, if I got everything right on May 30th, we've got 3 Indiana players in the MLB, 3 in AAA, 3 in AA, 2 in advanced single A, and 2 in single A. So we got players going up and down. Obviously, the MLB is one of the biggest places that people just keep going up and down. So that's going to change a lot. We've got some seniors that are great that could get drafted, etc. IU baseball is always pretty solid with having a good core going into professional baseball. Then with soccer, we've also got a great bunch of people that the MLS usually gets a lot of great players. We've got 9 currently in the MLS, 2 in the USL, which is the United Soccer League, and then we got 1 player playing in Finland. So soccer's also doing pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, our Hoosiers in the Pro for soccer are killing it. I know the Thompson brothers are both in the MLS, and I think one of them is with San Jose, the Earthquakes, I'm pretty sure.
Something like that, yeah.
Tanner. Yeah, he's been doing really well. So
yeah. All right, let's move on to Huber's Winery, which is still currently happening as of now. I think it's supposed to end at 9:30 p.m. Eastern.
Yes. I'm seeing if anything. Been checking Twitter to see if anything is actually happening, and nothing is happening. So
yeah, I think they were. So they basically started out with it is like a wine and dine kind of thing. They feed everyone. Everyone comes in. They obviously have a record crowd with about 1,000 people in there. Right at the cusp, they had to turn away 300 people because fire marshals. They do have a limit, but they kind of did that from what it seems like. Then they asked all the coaches a bunch of questions, including Fred Glass. And I think they did formal speeches and everything. But I got to watch Archie's questionnaire, Fred Glass's questionnaire, and then Archie's speech as of now. Right now, we are trying to get Tom Allen in there for IU football stuff, but no one has posted, at least as of right now, his comments. Peaks.com posted, and they said, here's Tom Allen's thing, except they had the video for Fred Glass. So we didn't have Tom Allen. So that's the only reason why we aren't going to talk about him as of now. But let's start with Archie's questionnaire first, because his speech he just gave a little rundown of just every player of how they're doing. Basically, it wasn't crazy exciting. I think most of the information came from the questions where all of the basically a lot of the media members got to ask him stuff. So I'll go through the list of the questions they asked him. You can obviously look online for to watch it yourself, but I'm gonna list all the questions, and then Matt and I are gonna mention a couple things, and we'll go to Fred Glass. So Archie, first question that he was asked, just to give an update the past few weeks on how things were going and when everyone was coming back. His second question was basically just talking about Juwan and his decision, saying how great it was for him, the kind of decision he made, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank God he's back.
Exactly. Next, they asked about Duran's update and his progress and everything. Archie talked about that it's a slow process, especially with the big guys and Achilles thing. It's going to be a slow process. Pushing with him with contact and basketball, it's going to push really into the fall program and then into November. So we've got a while for Duran, as we expected, but he's progressing. Then someone obviously brought up Romeo. And he talked about maximize it. Like they asked what Romeo needs to do to maximize his effectiveness right away. And Archie just talked about him getting acclimated with college first, basically. That was the first thing he's got to do, and just an emphasis on that.
Every freshman needs to do, so that's a fair answer.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Next, they asked about Devontae and his spring process, because they had, after the season was over, they had about a 6-week or so program of spring training before the past 3 to 4 weeks, which was right after school ended. They get a break. So right now they're on a break, but during the spring, Archie talked about how Devontae is basically starting to really take his game a little more serious, and he's putting in more extra work. He was a lot more consistent this spring, which is great to hear. Someone asked about just specific guys who have made big leaps within the past month and a half or so. And Archie gave
a very generic answer and said everyone.
Everyone, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know if I like that or don't like that, but all right.
It could be just, I don't know. That's a debate in itself. But then he asked about the non-conference schedule. I thought these were great answers. He just asked about updates with the non-conference schedule. Obviously, we have a couple games that are already scheduled, but he said that they're building the non-conference schedule. He talked about how the 20-game Big Ten schedule affects a lot of stuff. Most of it, they got to wait for TV announcements to get stuff, because that's obviously how we found Marquette with the Gavitt game, because we had to wait for just the TV to announce it. But I liked how he said, quote, we have to challenge ourselves. So he's really trying to build a non-conference schedule that's great. In the next couple of weeks, he said the non-conference schedule is supposed to be pretty much finalized. So we're going to get a lot of information pretty quick. He said we're going to find our ACC Big Ten opponent in the next day or so, which is what he was expecting. He's still expecting a couple early Big Ten games again, because we got that 20-game season, Big Ten games. We got a couple early Big Ten games this season, so it's not because we are doing the Big Ten tournament early, and it's because we are adding stuff. So I guess now early December Big Ten games are going to now be a thing, whether you like that or not. But he said there's going to be a very big gauntlet in late November and especially in late December, which is very challenging, but he said he wants to challenge them a lot earlier and a lot more.
I mean, Hey, I like that. I'm down. I like big games. It gets me pumped up at least as a fan.
Yeah,
So
that's true because we already got Marquette and Louisville as a home game. But they asked about Evan Fitzner and his contribution, and he was just it was another generic answer. He's just
another
it was
we
just recruiting,
we thought we liked his skill set and he's gonna bring some experience.
and it was just a good recruit. Yeah, and that was
Yep,
it.
we heard all the same things that we've been hearing. It's like, all right, okay.
Talked about the team and returning players, which basically being on the same page compared to last year. And he thought it was instead of talking about the returning players, he was like, "Oh, it's going to be really unique to have to rely on some of these newcomers because there's just a lot of them, with 6 of them, including Evan, coming in."
Yep.
And then the last question was just about race and what he got out of last season, being a redshirt. I liked his answers. He said he got a lot out of it. He took advantage of the physical development, which we obviously talk about. Everyone knows that it's huge to come in as a freshman and develop physically. He's got a long way to go, but he's developed a lot. And this was an interesting quote. He said he was a tough kid and a guy that will, quote, mix it up with us, which was how he ended the entire thing. So I guess you can take what you want with mix it up with us.
That means he's playing the 5. That's what that means to me. But, you know, who knows?
So do you got any I know I have a specific comment on one of those questions, but you got any thoughts of just Romeo stuff or Romeo?
Yes.
I just gave what I just gave what my comment was going to be away. But any stuff on Archie? He's we've kind of gotten to know what Archie gives with media answers, which is kind of what he gave. But I thought he gave a lot of good stuff. Do you have any comments on anything he talked about?
Okay, my comments on Archie's comments are that they're always generic, but there's one little breadcrumb for you in almost every single one. You're like, you if it was a Tom Crean press conference, you would have talked about that the entire time. But because it's a Archie Miller is like, oh yeah, Romeo getting used to college life. All right, moving on. Instead of like a 5-minute speech about how it's important for freshmen to get used to what it's like to be living on campus. But besides that, the one thing that stood out to me the most was when he's talking about the non-conference schedule and talking about how it needs to be challenging. I think he has a lot of belief in this team that they're going to be able to get it done on the road or in big games at home against people if he's wanting to challenge them early. I think he's very optimistic about this team.
He's very optimistic.
He's very optimistic about this team, which sets me up for utter and complete disappointment during the season. So, Archie, please don't do this to me, but I'm ready. I'm really excited to see where our ACC opponent is, and I was really happy to hear about Race Thompson and the rest of the guys, even though that answer was super freaking generic.
Yep.
That's it. That's my comments.
I liked a lot, and if you go watch the tape, which you should, it's only 11 and a half minutes. He gave when he talked about Romeo, I love basically how his reaction was of getting Romeo was kind of just more that it wasn't really that big of a deal, and obviously like compared to what we all make it out to be, as a good thing, because that's kind of what he expects out of him and his staff, that it was just great to see, and it feels like it's something that it wants to become habitual in the future, that he wants guys like Romeo coming to Indiana just to be like, nice. We got another top 10, 5-star recruit kid from Indiana, and how it wasn't just like, oh, we got this pivotal player that's going to change the scope. No, it was just a generic, right? We got him. Let's move on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just shows how good Romeo is, right? If you ask that question about Jerome Hunter, they're going to talk to you about his physical attributes. They talk to you, if you ask that question about Robert Finney, they're going to talk about his shooting and his dribbling. If you ask that question about any of the other incoming freshmen, you're going to give you like some sort of basketball thing. Like, what's going to be? Well, there's going to be physicality. There's going to be this. But Romeo's been getting beat up for the last 3 years, anyways, when he plays Indiana high school basketball. He's used to making shots. He's used to being the number one scorer on a team. He's done it all. He does it doing the AAU stuff. So I think that's really truthful when it comes to, and it shows Archie Miller's experience with big time recruits from when he was at Arizona and Ohio State with Thad Matta, where he's like, yeah, he's going to be fine. Like, I've worked with people like this before. Like, they're going to come in and they're just going to need to know where to go to class and where's Woodburn, where's Where's the arts and science building? Like, where is stuff on campus? Like, that's going to be the biggest adjustment for him, which I think is really funny.
Yeah. Basically just an average kid coming in terms of that.
Right, exactly. He's an average kid who's going to be making, $20-30 million a year in the NBA someday.
Eventually, yeah. All right, let's last but not least, we'll talk about Fred Glass's comments and questions, which I thought a lot of the stuff that he talked about were great. There's a lot of updates in there for you just about the program in general. He started out talking for about 5 minutes, which again is great. About 5 minutes, literally talking about the accomplishments of all of the landscape of the IU sports program. I'm not going to rehash that 5 minutes because obviously I'd take here 5 minutes of talking about the accomplishments for this past year for all of IU sports. He went literally from volleyball all the way to swimming and diving, as he should, because a lot of guys and girls were doing great stuff. But that's how he opened it. Then he got some questions. Alex Bozich asked a question about expectations for IU men's basketball. Fred Glass just kind of shook his head and he's like, oh, come on. I don't really like to give that kind of stuff, that he doesn't like to give predictions and expectations and stuff. And that's where he left that answer, basically. The next question was about IU and Kentucky trying to get a series. And he just chuckled again because he's like, oh, I feel like you guys always ask me that, but there's never any new news with that. And of course, no news. Other than that, he just wants to get back on it. He said Archie and Coach Calipari have a great relationship. He wants to get back on that. He's optimistic about it, but as of now, no news, and I don't think there will be for a little while. But they asked about the 20-game Big Ten conference. Just asked him about that. Wasn't anything too interesting in that. Just said that it is what it is. Going to add some extra games. Sure. Then some guy asked about, there was a contract with ESPN that IU was supposed to play Carolina in the Jimmy V game this year, and wherever that went. And he says, oh, that's a good question. I heard about that. Not sure. And he didn't know. So then the next question was, obviously you're just waiting for it. Of course, over the last week, the drop in our basketball APR, which he just said, oh, it's great. It's a transition period. Nothing against old coaches, but it doesn't help when you have to have a transition period. You got people leaving in the pros, which sometimes doesn't help, et cetera, just generic answers. Then someone asked about his reactions with the recruiting class coming in for both football and basketball, but obviously mainly basketball. Same generic kind of answer, just saying, oh, it's been great. And you kind of know the reactions everyone have been getting. Then this is a great update. They asked about updates over the south end zone at the football stadium. It's on time, on budget. They'll use it a couple times over the summer, but it's going to be ready for football in August and September. So that's great to hear, because obviously if you went to IU at all, even for probably a month, you would have known that Indiana University projects never usually go on time.
Yep. Yep. Oh, by the way, update on Isaiah Stewart. So we were talking about that too. Yeah, he announced his top 10. So top 10 forward, power forward / center, Isaiah Stewart, who goes to La Lumiere and La Porte, Indiana, releases top 10 schools. IU is among the top 10 schools. The other schools included in his top 10 include Duke, Villanova, Michigan State, Texas, Louisville, Syracuse, Washington, Georgetown, and Notre Dame. So I think more importantly on this list is that he cut out UNC, because UNC and Kentucky were recruiting him really hard. So he cut out UNC and Kentucky out of his top 10, and it's now down to obviously those schools. I think it's really interesting to see IU, Georgetown, Notre Dame, Washington, and Texas, and Syracuse, 6 of the top 10. I think it's really, predictable to see Louisville, Michigan State, Villanova, and Duke in his top 10. But I just thought I'd get that across and say, hey, IU, 2019 recruiting, woo. So live news on air.
I mean, yeah, literally. If you go on Twitter, it updated less than a minute ago. But I just love the landscape and the scope of of his schools. You go all the way from Washington to Syracuse to Texas. There's literally to Georgetown,
IU to Notre Dame.
I love that. But yeah, no, it just goes to show how Georgetown, I think they're turning things back around. Obviously,
they're a blue blood, and I want them to be good again. But going off of Isaiah Stewart, his connection is that he's really good friends with Thomas Bryant. So that's a good sign. But, I think it's either we get him or we get Trace Jackson Davis because they both play the same position. So
yeah, I think it'll be whoever decides to commit first. But real quick before we wrap it up, in addition, they asked about the South End Zone project. Again, just to reiterate, on time, on budget, it'll be ready for football in the fall. Then he just gave the the rest of the sports projects without anyone asking him. He said the golf course is doing well. Obviously, it just started. It'll be ready for spring of 2019. It'll take a bit just because you got to go through winter and everything. And then volleyball and wrestling, that center will be ready in the winter. That a lot of volleyball games will be played there, but some just with the overlap, some will be played there, some won't be. So that'll be good. There's a lot of great new venues. He loved the aspect of the South End Zone being more of like a Big Ten enclosed space to make it a little louder. But great updates on a lot of the Indiana sports venues. And then the last question was kind of a little bit of a vague question with the question and the answer is just views on the Rice Commission of College Basketball and the changes. Basically just saying that he gave his stuff to President McRobbie. He thought some people kind of misunderstood some of what they were trying to do, and just him giving more of his recommendations and trying to implement some change. Way too big of a topic to talk about, but that's just what he.
That's actually, I could make that into 3 podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
We could talk about reforming college basketball for days,
and even just explaining the topic. I know that's kind of just leaving it as a just kind of ambiguous if you don't really know that topic. Even just explaining that would take way too long, and we're already close to 45 minutes into this episode. Speaking of that, we are going to wrap it up for our 38th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you all so much for joining us. Stay tuned for updates on Twitter at the Hoosier Sound, Facebook, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Visit our website, thehoosiersound.com, to find all of our information regarding our podcasts. And speaking of our website, it would really mean a lot to help to try and update that. So our GoFundMe is in the link in the description below on the website. Even just $1 or $2 would help. But as always, send us your questions as the audience. Be sure to comment, chat, send us a message at contact@thehoosiersound.com on what questions you have, and we'll try and get them on our next episode, maybe including someone that you might want us to interview. But lastly, if you enjoy the show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. It really helps so that we can grow this podcast. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.